So for a lot of our casual listeners, right? Like for example, a good example is the MAKJ song that you worked on called Worship, right? If you go to Spotify and you search Worship, right, there's only artist MAKJ, that's it.
Yeah.
But there's no other credits. So how can an artist properly credit their co-producers, or do they choose not to? Like obviously MAKJ did, because you can go in depth for the credit, you can actually see it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but most people don't actually know that there's actually, you can click more and then go to song credits and everything.
Exactly. Like, it's funny because that's where it becomes ghost production, and that's where it becomes co-production, right? So a ghost production would be you sign an NDA and basically you get a fee, and then that's it. You have nothing to do with the record. You deliver the record and that's it. You're done, right? A co-production is somebody that like is not ashamed to be like, yeah, I work with other people on the record. Or, it can get tricky because if you worked on a record and the song, like even if you just did a chord progression for it and you sent it to your friend or whatever, and he releases the record without you, on it. Well, technically I wrote that chord progression. I have it in proof right here. You could get in trouble for that, So I think it's really important as you're working on records to be very transparent at the very beginning on, if you help me with this, I'll give you credit on it. Or as you know, when you sign a song, you have to list who worked on the song, right? And this is stored, and I'm not sure how they do it in Asia or Europe, but for us, we have two companies, BMI and ASCAP, and those are like your ways of like crediting properly, like who's on what record. So on ASCAP, I could search on the ASCAP repertoire. Like I could search a song and see who's credited on it. But again, this is more for music industry professionals because fans don't necessarily care. All they care about is who's the artist behind the record. Like people don't necessarily care about, let's say, I don't know, what the hell is his name? I can't think of Dua Lipa's. Ian Kirkpatrick, right?
Justin Bieber.
Well, Ian Kirkpatrick makes like a ton of Dua Lipa records, and he's one of the most insane producers. If you're a music producer out there, go on YouTube, find his streams, like that he was doing 3 or 4 hour streams. He's an amazing music producer, but like no one really cares that Ian Kirkpatrick is the producer. They only care about Dua Lipa being the producer, but Ian Kirkpatrick is the one making the magic. Or you take a look at like, this is the most recent example of music, but take a look at like Oliver, right? And maybe his sample packs on Splice. He's got Oliver Power Tools 1 and 2. Well, the producer, quote unquote, behind Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter is like, I guess, let's call him the producer, right? He put 2 Oliver Splice loops together, a guitar loop, or let's call it a melody loop and a drum loop, and that was Espresso. It was 2 loops put together. I think he maybe added a little bit of extra guitar over it, but nobody, like Oliver doesn't have any credits on that song. 0, because he gave away free royalty samples, and whoever took that loop and that guitar loop and put that together is the producer, and I'm sure they're probably running to the bank right now. So it's really tough, and that's the downside of quote unquote maybe monetizing your content, is that if you do sample packs and something like that happens, it stinks, but when there's risk, there's reward. So I'm sure he does okay, Oliver, with everyone else making money because everyone uses those samples. They're so good, especially like someone like Kashmir. But Kashmir doesn't get credit for the Taki sample or any of those. Yeah. So
yeah. I saw the stream, man, and he posted it on Twitter. Back then, it was still called Twitter, right? And then he tagged DJ Snake. Oh my God, what the heck, man?
Yeah, it's you don't get the credit for that, dude. But it's interesting when you realize what's going on. And if you are into this scene and you are a fan, you mentioned before, you will be invested in that. Like you will be invested in the stuff that goes on behind the scene. But really, I always say to my students, like it's like that one troll, right? Like where, let's say you use a Kashmir loop in your song and like people are afraid to use that loop because they'll be like, oh, they're going to know on SoundCloud it's a Kashmir loop or whatever. But does anyone care about that in Taki Taki? No. Does anybody care that Mi Gente is a preset in Arcade or Output Arcade or whatever that synth is? No. It's just that the only people that care about that are other music producers. And yeah, you may get hate for that, but guess what? Like, who cares? It's a small percentage. If you have a hit record, no one's going to care about that, you know? So, yeah, just kind of do what you love and just don't care about other people's opinions. Just make what's cool.